life opens up, right?
To the beach and get some ocean Oh my God, you are more beautiful than the morning.
My song is called Little House, Big World. Bahai Kubo, Malaking Mundo. It's in many languages. It's about a little house in a big world. We're all part of that. And it's fun to work with the boom booms. They did some wonderful harmonies. It's really exciting.
You are more beautiful than the morning. You are more beautiful than the morning.
Yeah. Sweet. Good job, boys and girls. There was a lot leading up to it, getting the artists together with each other and them going over the songs. We set up all the musicians so that anything could happen. We had our arsenal of instruments put in position so we could scramble to battle stations quickly. There, that's a fun song.
The best guitar in the world.
In a classic sense, like the old Stax Records days or Motown, where someone would say, and I want the horns to go bap, 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 and I want this to happen, and you just respond and try to give them what they wanted. And then next, let's do it again. What is songs? We set up all the musicians so that...
Get some more licks in the candy shop.
Yeah, a little 2-bar instrumental. Yeah, bring in Art.
Some of the people that expressed an interest had actually never been involved in music before.
Hey, Art. Hello. How you doing, man?
Hey, Art.
And working with our collaborators, it just made the process that much easier.
What we're going to do is be relentless and put this down in a structure, but you can be out there telling us, I don't think that's funky, dudes. It's not funky enough. You can be saying,
But only one.
I need a little more faith.
My teacher used to take us for a march around the block, but I'd always make a detour to the candy shop.
If you go back to my injury, I sat around for the next 2 or 3 years after this wheelchair thing, wondering what I was doing, where I was going, and what was the point of it. But after I kind of took up this artistic dare and started painting, I went all over the place with my ideas. And
when I started to put my heart into my life, I realized that with the writing is where the freedom is.
Right? So I'm digging the floor tom action in the verse.
Yeah, with Craig Northey and the voice is really cool, man. And to have Brian Adams, his drummer, playing with me, man, it was so huge, like he's just so big, man. I was like, wow.
Glenn David, like just a full-on rocker, and he is excited about his rock. We rocked it. It was awesome.
Being in that little cubby hole and having the microphone in front of me and seeing the band outside was absolutely phenomenal.
In the beginning, I took band class, at high school.
I had to practice at least an hour a day. This was with an accordion.
Started out with the trumpet and went to the string bass.
Playing classical music. Playing William Tell Overture and Mozart and Strauss.
When I heard Jimi Hendrix, it kind of turned my ears around. So I think I was in grade 8 when I started my first band.
I remember in my grade 8 graduation, I got the courage to play my acoustic guitar at the dance.
After I had some operations on my legs that made it impossible to play the accordion over the summer. And I found a guitar.
But I lost the ability to play guitar, so I went to study computer music, and now I've been losing the ability to edit. So then I took up harmonica.
Something clicked because it was a more social instrument. The accordion, I played in an accordion band, but that's like frogs getting together to mate or something.
It's wonderful composing, but it's, sitting and editing in the computer. where's harmonica? You know, it's playing, so it's fun.
Due to my condition, I could not play. I really had to give up performing.
VAMS opens up that door for music, and you can really change people's lives, actually. You know, when you're involved in something and you're really stoked on a project or sports, whatever it might be, and you know, for people to get into VAMS and write a song, or get back on some drums or keyboard and learn some instruments, make some music, it's the best thing.
Actually, the greatest thing was kind of Jerry's energy the whole time, just like so happy and into this whole thing.
Yeah,
it's really inspiring.
Well, when you've listened to your song for over a year with just your own vocals going da na 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 na, and you get to finally hear it in the studio with a full rock band.
Woo! Warehouse. It was the place where this could happen, this kind of thing could happen. And the unique thing about the Warehouse first is that it exists. It's made by a musician, Bryan Adams, who thought of all the things that studios weren't. And he put all these things in, like sunlight, oxygen, space, and you go in there and you record and you don't think about anything but the music because everything in your environment is just right.
This building is a heritage building. It's one of the oldest buildings in Vancouver. Once upon a time, it was a sort of like a hardware and supply store. This would be in the 1850s. So they would come into Vancouver Harbor from Victoria, come here, get supplies or a boat or whatever, and then go back over to the mouth of the Fraser, and then go up as far as you could go beyond Hope, and then, this is gold mining history, so this building is amazing.
People that I've seen here before but usually can only last short periods of time, stayed there the whole day. They didn't want to leave.
Because everybody's saying yes to everyone. Nobody's saying no. Everybody's got a good vibe. So it just worked and worked and worked. And I just keep looking at it because we're going away from these 2 days with most of what we have. And there's a lot of work to be done before the whole thing's finished. Go ahead.
What are we doing? Start at the top. 1, 2, 3, 4.
You got me singing and a dancing and a laughing and a clapping and a skipping and a jumping, and I think I'm never gonna get enough of you. You're always standing by my side and never let a day go by that you don't make me feel a high and keep on loving me no matter what I seem to do.
VAMS is Vancouver Adapted Music Society, and we have a studio at JF Strong, the rehab center.
And we came down, were interviewed, and qualified for the program.
And the next day I got a call. He says, "You're in, man. You're fantastic. You're a resident rocker."
I look forward to hitting the studios every week and getting a tune going on. It's just it's a really wicked program.
Well, Dave and Sam started VAMS 25 years ago.
Sam and I met in 1985 or so. And I remember going for a ride on a Greyhound bus with him, or something like that had a compartment for people in wheelchairs behind the rear wheel. But we struck up a pretty quick friendship, and we had a lot of things in common, and we'd both been musicians before our injuries, and began to talk about the idea of developing a society that could support and facilitate access to musical expression for people with disabilities, including ourselves.
Oh, you're gonna love this one.
Oh, I took her out for dinner 'cause I thought she was a winner, name was Mary.
Well, that sounds good.
Before my injury, music was everything. And then become a quadriplegic, and you got all these pressures and stresses and confusion and frustration. Then you need music more than ever. And that is the time when you look at the keyboard and you what do I do with these?
She said she needed loving, that she'd been through several dozen. I got ready.
And then what happened?
I think what happened was we came around at the time MIDI came, and we grabbed it and maxed it out technology-wise. There was no model we had, there was no example. You know, quadriplegics playing music, you know, that's wasn't really anything in anybody's vocabulary or anybody's, you know, reality.
That's not so good.
You could tell you had 4 guys who just loved music, so we just kept going down the road with it, and then it led to you know, doing live performances, and we were like the performance band of the Vancouver Adapted Music Society. Yeah, I think you know, we were looking at a period when we were still at a threshold of people accepting others that had disabilities. I shouldn't say accepting, it's just that awkward about being around people with disabilities.
I think that was Brentwood Mall, as I recall.
Yeah, exactly.
People would be, we were playing, I think I remember, in front of a shoe store, and people were just window shopping. We were just another window in a way. People were just kind of like, oh yeah, moving on, you know.
We were beside the mannequins, and we were these quadriplegics playing music, you know, oh well, just another gimmick.
They didn't quite know what to do with us, you know, in a way. But, you know, I think that's part of the whole purpose of what we were doing, was to get out there, you know, and actually show people that we can play music, and there's no reason why we shouldn't be playing music. Not that we're, you know, necessarily great musicians, given the way we adapted, and we were just learning this new approach to music, really.
Sam was a great chatter during throughout songs, so he found funny ways of, you know, introducing us as the band. And I think he said, you know, we're an all-disabled band, and we only let able-bodied guys in if they have something wrong with them, and these 2 guys are morally disabled. So I think that was his angle, right? Yeah, it's too bad Sam won in politics and left music. He made a great musician and wrote some really great songs.
I think for a number of years I tried to put a lot of effort into writing my own material, doing my own thing, kind of not wanting anybody's help, wanting to prove something. The more time I spend working with other people, the more time I realize that that's really where the kick is, you know, to watch somebody else's face light up and see that they can do something, they can write something, they can...
Well, if I didn't have this program, I would just be at home playing video games all day with nothing else to do. So the guitar gives me more stuff to work on for the future as a career. Anything's possible if you try and work at it.
Yeah, this song is really taking on like a really big, legendary, sweeping vibe to it, yeah. I think he's excited about it.
For the first time in my life, found a purpose, my peace of mind, and I know I'm gonna be alright. For the first time in my life, found a purpose, my peace of mind, and I know
you know, with the odds and all the other bands that we have, this album's going to be phenomenal, let alone that evening.
Hello. Hooray, let the show begin. I've been ready. Hello. Hooray, let the lights go dim. I've been ready. He'll stay. Each of them an actor, a writer, each of them a play. I've been waiting so long to sing my song, and I've been waiting so long for this day to come. Well, I've been thinking so long I was the only one. So roll out your hoops and circus boots, a little ready. Roll out your American dream. It's recruits as a rain to fall on a funky day. As ready as a man that's born, only to be born again. I've been waiting so long to sing my song.
It's been wonderful to collaborate with the musicians in town and the videographers like yourself, and it's a great place, and I'd like to just see it continue.
So that's a little bit more about, oh, hold on, it's still going. Shh, stop the autoplay. Sorry about that. So that's a little bit more about what the Vancouver Adaptive Music Society does, what their stage or strong session program does. And unfortunately, Graham, who's our VAMS coordinator, wasn't able to make it on. There's something issue with his internet right now. If you guys have any specific questions, I can provide his email into the chat. So if you guys want to learn more about VAMS, how to become a part of it, how to be or participate in some of these music sessions, you can definitely reach out. Let me get his email into the chat. So that is Graham Wyman's email. And if you would like to contact him, you can definitely do so.
Oh, yes. Hi. I was gonna say, who is that? So it was Graham. So I do know Graham. So thanks for saying for the questions of that. So I really enjoy that. And yeah. So may I ask a question, or is other people asking a question? Can I? What about Alexandra? Well, I'll ask a question. The warehouse studio, is that still in this COVID time? Is that still happening, or have they closed that down?
I'm not the best person to answer this because I'm not sure exactly what VAMS is operating with. I do know that we're in the process of finding a new office, so I don't believe that warehouse is currently in use, and especially since COVID, I know that all of the VAMS sessions have gone, for the most part, virtually. So if there's an instrument you need, they would drop it off to you, but then actually host lessons virtually.
Right. Okay, because I've sang Sylvie's a song, and she's there, and then Dave too. So thanks for answering that. Warehouse Studio. So it's huge. Wow, that's a Bryan Adams studio. Is that right? Wow. Okay. So thanks, and I'll let others ask the question. Okay. Sorry, Alexandra. I think she has a question or something like that. So, and then I think I'll just go mute.
Good. Is there any other questions on the floor that I hopefully can answer? No? Okay. Yeah, I made a mistake sending it to the wrong chat. I believe now that Graham's email should be in the chat. And if you also would prefer, I'll send a follow-up email with his email in it as well. So if you're not able to get it here, you'll get it in an email soon after this meeting. Okay. If there's no further questions, I want to again apologize for the technical difficulties we've had and not having our coordinator here to be able to answer your questions in person. But we really hope that you enjoyed the documentary and hopefully get involved with VAMS because they do some incredible things for the community.
Thank you. I enjoy the documentary. So yes. Yeah, so I guess I'll just have to ask Graham because because of this COVID time, because GF Strong, because I used to bike ride to GF Strong and then be with at the VAM studio, be with Graham, but then now that's they I don't think they allow us in, but that's good for safety reasons. So yeah, okay.
I would definitely email him to ask more questions about that, about your specific circumstance, because I'm sure he could help figure out a different accommodation during this time.
Yeah, it's online lessons now, from what I'm saying. But I'm just interested to just to be involved and see what's happening here. So I'll be quiet. So thank you. You do a very good job in explaining and showing us that.
Yeah. Well, awesome. I wish you all the best of your day, as well as I hope to see you in the next programming and later today, as well as for the rest of the week. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you. You don't have a name. It's just Disability Foundation. May I call? What's your name, please? I'm Sheena. Oh, it's written.
Angela.
Oh,
Sorry.
Angela. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.
Where it says live transcript with the closed caption symbol. You should be able to click it either on the actual button or there should be a little arrow and they'll give an option to show subtitles, or if they are currently showing and you don't want them to show, you can also have the option to hide subtitles there. So we're excited to have you here and to talk with Brad McCannell from the Hansen Foundation more about what they do and how it impacts everyday life for you.
I guess that's over to me then. And yes, what I wanted to do today is just talk in big, broad terms about some of the things we're doing at the foundation, but focusing on the RHFAC, the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification Program, and talking about a simple concept. It's on the title of this presentation that a barrier to a person with a disability is a barrier to making a profit, and it's a message we're carrying to industry. What we found when we started looking at the big picture. I was asked 5 years ago to come to the Rick Hansen Foundation and help them develop the RHFAC, which is a rating system measuring the built environment. But the reason we felt we needed this is because we saw very clearly that the giant gap between building code and what the real needs of the community of people with disabilities. And what we saw was, as a community, we kept trying to improve the codes, improve the enforcement, increase the penalties, and we did that. And we were quite successful at that, especially in Ontario, where the OADA is a marvelous piece of legislation that mandates accessibility. But a gap had been created where industry wasn't at the table. All this stuff happened independent of industry. We upgraded codes, especially in Ontario. We created all these new requirements, but nobody went to industry and said, hey, are you on board with this? How can we get you more involved? How are these problems happening all the time still in this day and age when we've known the issue's never been how to make things accessible. We've known how to do that since the 70s. And in the 80s, universal design, the concept came along, and if you embrace those two concepts, nothing has to be inaccessible. And in fact, if you embrace those concepts, you don't even have to use disabled language when you're talking about building or designing or renovating. Because if you do it right, it works better for everyone. That giant gap had to be addressed. So we needed a way to reach out to industry. And what we realized is there were some professional access consultants out there. myself being one of them. Before I came to the Rick Hansen Foundation, I spent 25 years as an independent professional access consultant, working on large projects, large events, large buildings, large terminals. I did a lot of work with the Paralympic Committee, and I've done a lot of work with major terminals and convention centers, those kinds of things. But what we recognize is we had to get industry on board. We had to start changing their culture. We had to make them understand their role in all this was absolutely critical. I'm going to start sharing my screen right now because I have a PowerPoint. I'm going to deviate from it because I got to admit, I feel like I'm preaching to the choir here. Everybody on this call, I don't have to explain to anybody here about experience, people with disabilities, and the importance of that in the big picture. I do want to just go over some big, broad concepts while we're at it. Let me just jump. I'm going to hit share a screen, and I'm gonna hit this button, and I'm going to really hope it works. I really hope it works. So the premise is simple. The barrier to a person with a disability is a barrier to making a profit. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the Rick Hansen Foundation itself. I'm certain most of you know who we are and what we've done. We've been around for over 30 years now, trying to attack. Our main mission was to remove barriers for people with disabilities. One of the things you have to do before you can remove any barriers to people with disabilities, you have to understand, first off, number one, the very first thing you have to know is who people with disabilities really are. Right now, 1 in 7 Canadians reports having a significant disability. 1 in 5 by 2036. Those numbers are actually way low. As Stats Canada is starting to find out, we are already at 1 in 5. We are already at over 20% of the population being people with significant disabilities. That number hides a couple of things. One of the things it hides is that for every one of them individuals, every one of them has at least one other person in their life that also benefits from a barrier-free environment. Mother, father, sister, brother, uncle, aunt, lover, paid caregiver, paid lover. Somebody else benefits too, because not only do they benefit because I benefit as a person with a disability, but they benefit because when they're helping me, they're safer in a barrier-free environment. They're more protected. They're less likely to hurt their backs helping us. They're less likely to have to become people with disabilities themselves. So it's not 24% of the population, it's 40%, it's 50%. Most of us have more than one person in our life. It's 50, 60% today. What we wanted to know was, if you looked at the commercial and the retail built environment, let's just set aside housing just for the moment, even though it's the single most important thing in terms of built environment. But for now, let's look at retail and commercial. And so we posed a question to the Conference Board of Canada. What would happen if all of all the commercial and retail space in Canada was accessible to people with disabilities that would meet the minimum of the RHFAC, the 60% of our available points? We'll talk more about that in a minute. But what would happen if basic access was provided, real access, not code access, but if it was provided in commercial and retail environments across Canada? Well, here's what would happen. The first thing they identified was that, and this is 2018 numbers, 57% of people with disabilities ready, willing, and able to work are currently unemployed. 57%, not of the whole community, because some people just can't work, not in the traditional sense at least. 57% of people ready, willing, and able to work are either unemployed because of the built environment. And what does that cost us as a country? That costs us $16.8 billion in gross domestic product. Now, I know for a fact that if there was $8.8 billion buried out under the road somewhere, we would go get it. And if we needed to develop special equipment to dig down there and get it, we would develop that equipment. If we needed special training for the people running those machines, we would get that special training. And yet, as a country, as a community, as a culture, we seem content to leave that $16 billion in the road and seem content to leave 57% of the population unemployed. It's a significant issue. And it's so easy to fix, it's crazy. But the first thing we had to do is address this gap between code and real meaningful access. The first thing we had to do is address the cultural issues. The first thing you need to create meaningful access is to understand who people with disabilities really are. We just brushed over that pretty quickly, but you get a sense of it. It's not about a few wheelchair guys. One of the things, I'm a wheelchair guy. It may seem funny coming from a wheelchair user. But I just can't believe how we've dominated the codes. We've dominated the regulations. When you talk to a person on the street about disabilities, the first thing that pops in their head is a wheelchair. The international symbol for people with disabilities is a wheelchair, and yet wheelchair users are less than 30% of the population of people with disabilities. So we have to stop this focus on mobility, which is codes live there. So we have to broaden that perspective. We have to make sure people understand who people with disabilities really are. The second element you need is to change the design culture. The biggest barrier to people with disabilities is now and always has been the attitudinal barrier. Preconceived notions of what people with disabilities are capable of. In the design community, in the operations community, in the planning community, they still think of people with disabilities as wheelchair users, as people with mobility impairments. So that had to change. I started talking earlier, we have in this country some excellent professional access consultants. People have been around for a long time. Myself, I operated Canadian barrier-free design for over 25 years. You've got Level Playing Field in Alberta. You've got Accessibility Canada in Ontario, along with Design Able's another accredited just firm doing amazing work out there. But the trouble is everybody's working on their own. Everybody's working with their own checklists, their own concepts, their own priorities. We needed common language and common methodology, because if we can't measure accessibility, then it's really hard to move forward. And it's never been more important than right now, because every level of government in every province, in every territory, they're about to announce major infrastructure planning. But all the talk about aligning codes using Accessible Standards Canada and Accessible Canada Act, that stuff will not be in place before all this infrastructure spending is committed, designed. The result's going to be that every province is going to do it to their own codes, to their own standards. Remember, there's a big difference between codes and standards. Codes are the legal minimum. Standards are an overlay that you can put on for a specific site for specific use. You know, you might do a special overlay for a rehab center, or you might do a special overlay for a sports arena. But they're standards, they're goals. The problem is everybody's going to be doing something different. And without common language, without common methodology, it's not measurable. We can't compare buildings. We can't see where we're at. So we took the position that you can't fix things until you know they're there. So we developed the RHFAC, the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification Program. And its sole purpose is to identify what's actually there. We're not the code police. We don't come in and say, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. We identify what's there, because for an owner, an operator, how can they fix things unless they know what's broken? They need to see the big picture. They need to be shook out of this idea that it's a few wheelchair users. The RHFAC does that. It breaks the building down in 8 categories, and it gives a summary sheet. So in one page, an owner can see exactly where they're at, how they compare nationally, what they need to fix. It'll be the bathrooms, washrooms. It'll be the washrooms. It's always the washrooms. It's always the wayfinding. It's always the vertical elevations transportation. It's the stairs, it's the elevators, it's those kinds of things. It's always the same thing. But with this document, they can now do long-term planning. And with this document, their awareness level shifts. And it's the same thing that the sustainability guys did when they were bringing in LEAD. Some of you may be aware of LEAD. It's an environmental program, leadership and energy. Oh, I should know the acronym. I apologize. I don't remember it. But what they were able to do, what the US and Canadian Green Building Council were able to do was change design culture. They literally took sustainability from an academic discussion in the 70s to everyday normal design building process in the new millennium. A lot of places registered with LEEDs, a lot of places aren't now. There's competition for LEEDs out there. There's BOMA Best, which is an amazing program, works really well on existing facilities. But it's all focused on sustainability. And I would argue that if a building doesn't sustain people, then it's not sustainable. I don't care how much water you recycle. I don't care how many off-gassing solutions you find. If it's not usable by the people, it's not sustainable. So we needed to bridge that gap. The problem is we have not enough professional access consultants. I said earlier, the first thing you need is to understand who people with disabilities are. Second thing you need is to address cultural issues. You have to get in the minds of the planners, the designers, the architects. You have to make them understand that this is a priority. The third thing you need is to professionalize the delivery of professionalize the delivery of accessible design, which of course includes universal design, includes adaptable design, includes accessible design. That third element is to professionalize the delivery of accessible design is critically important for industry. Right now, what's happening is they're relying on, it might be a friend. You know, I talked to a person developing a major project in the US, $360 million building. I asked him what his access plan was. He says, no, I got it all figured out. I know a guy that uses a wheelchair, so I'm going to ask him. What? Other times they will go to the advocacy community. They'll go to advocates and say, hey, what can we do? And it puts the advocate in an impossible position. They don't have background in built environments. They don't have background in how things actually get built. Their expertise is in the lived experience. The job of the advocate is to identify the barrier, to identify what the problem is that needs to be removed, what's not allowing them to participate. Their job's not to solve that problem because they don't have background in the built environment. So the RHFAC comes along and says, well, there's no way I can train enough people to be universal design experts to go out in the field and make all these changes. I can't do that. I couldn't do that in one course. I couldn't do that in 20 courses. I've been doing it for 25 years. I still learn something new literally every month. So we had to do something else. So we figured out what we needed was a disability lens. The RHFAC is not a checklist. It's a rating system, carefully weighted, carefully tested, vetted by every major organization of and for with people with disabilities right across the country. Vetted a second time by a technical committee made up of industry professionals, consumers, organizations of and for people with disabilities. And then vetted a third time by an advisory panel of operators, Cadillac Fairview, for example. So it's been fully vetted, and its purpose is really to identify what's there. But the big difference is it's not a checklist. You can't just walk in and start checking things off. What you have to have is the training, the RHFAC certification training. And if you take the course, it's online. What it does is it teaches you how to use our tool. Our tool is the expert. Our tool's been vetted by the community. Our tool is updated every 3 years, which is somewhere between 6 and 9 years faster than any code. The tool's the expert. And the people that we train, the people that take our course, are industry professionals already. I can't take you from ground zero in one course and have you operate the RHFAC effectively. But if you have an architectural background, if you're a building inspector, if you're an engineer, if you work as a planner, if you understand the built environment, then to walk on site with the RHFAC and be able to see your entire facility in 8 different categories, identify what's really there, not offer solutions beyond the solution. You need a power door, but not spec it. That's for a professional. That's for an access professional to do down the road. The idea is to get the owner up to speed on what needs to be done, develop a document that goes for long-term planning, and try to resolve the low-hanging fruit at the very least. We could make tremendous strides in creating accessible with very simple things. You know, hearing loops over desks and in meeting rooms to enable people with hearing aids to hear easier. Using better contrast, using better wayfinding, using noise cancellation, using air purification. There's a million things we can do that are really inexpensive. It would bring these places into the realm of being accessible. The RHFAC identifies what's there. The person operating that program, that rating system, is a trained professional. When they rate the program, it goes into a second stage where an adjudicator looks at it to make sure that maybe the architect hires a buddy of his to do the RHFAC rating. Got to be careful against that. We got to protect against that kind of use. So what we did was we created an adjudicator who goes through all, make sure everything's copacetic before it goes on to the registry of accessible buildings. So it's important to understand all that and how that works. And we'll talk a little more about how that's going to affect you. The important thing to understand at this stage is that it's an industry program. It's not a consumer program. It's not designed to tell you where the nearest washroom is. It's designed to affect culture. It's designed to change the way industry views accessibility. It's designed to mimic LEED, change the culture, bring accessibility into the normal everyday design process. Really important thing to recognize through this whole discussion is it's a concept that gets lost very easily. You have to remember that access is not not a design decision. Access is a management decision. It's not a design decision. The designer will design whatever you want, Mr. Owner, Mr. Operator. Now, yes, they need education. They got to be smart enough, and there's a long way to go there too. But until ownership requires it, until regulations require it, until all these strong codes and standards and penalties that we have developed through the ASC and through well, barrier-free BC is another good example. Until those get into place, we need to educate them other ways. Just to help you, you probably don't know what you're looking at. This is a set of stairs. On the right, it's pretty hard to see it. It's a set of stairs, and this is precisely why you need the high contrast. Most of you probably already know that. But this is what happens when...
Brad, I don't think the PowerPoint's going.
Oh no. What do you see on screen? Do you see anything on screen?
I see the title slide.
Oh geez, I've gone through like 6 slides. Let me try something. I'm going to push some buttons.
Yeah, maybe disconnect and reconnect the share screen. That's really unfortunate.
Oh, it is because I was assuming people would be able to read what I was seeing. I'm going to exit it then. Did it exit? I don't even know.
Yeah, we're back to seeing you.
I so apologize to everyone. I am an absolute techno peasant. I'm an aging white male who just can't learn anymore, I guess. So it's too bad because that graphic would have really helped. Let me just try it one more time just to see if it'll do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. I shouldn't be allowed to touch buttons. Tell me what you see.
Yes, we see the green and blue graphic.
Okay, and then did it just change?
Yes, yes, it did.
Ah, so this is what I was talking about. On the right-hand side is a set of stairs that you can't see because there's no high contrast. This is why they need access consultants. That's why they need lived experience in their daily lives. But when you look at that, my point is that it's a management decision, because what this is this. The stairs on the right controlled by one business. The stairs on the left controlled by another. The stairs on the left, yeah, screw it. We don't need to do high contrast. So it's that concept of getting to the management, letting management understand it's a design decision. How much it influences consumers. You know, a recent Angus Reid poll, 30% consider accessibility when they're deciding place to visit. Well, that lines up with our other stats about who people with disabilities actually are. I talked about the RHFAC. I don't want to over dwell on it too much. The purpose of it is more important from your perspective. And the purpose of it is really quite simple. It's to just shift the design culture. It's to bring industry to the table. The guys actually paying for all the change that the codes require, they need to be at the table, and this brings them to the table. And we're having tremendous success in the industry overall, because they're seeing it. They see the obvious, and especially COVID. COVID pointed it out in no uncertain terms. All these barriers and all these things, and for the first time, the rest of the world felt a little bit of what we feel, being stuck in their homes because they can't leave. Well, welcome to our world. You know, we can't get transportation, and when we get where we're going, we can't get in the buildings. And so having you, Mr. John Q. Public, whine and complain about being stuck in your home for a while, whine and complain about having difficulty working, well, you know, welcome to our world. Maybe it's not all a bad thing. I talk about meaningful access quite a bit. I see it as the ability to independently and safely access the built environment. But the real kick of it is it's the whole experience of the user. If you have a really amazing accessible washroom on your site, congratulations. You might have a great elevator. You might have a really nice reception desk. But what was the experience of the user? What was the whole experience of the user? From the moment they arrived, whether it's by car, you know, on a bus, a cab, maybe they just walked or rolled up. What was their whole experience? I don't care how good the washroom was if I can't find the entrance to the building. Oops, just so you're generally aware, this is what we've done to date. We've rated over 1,300 buildings. Of that, 850 received certification, and 75 of them reached our gold level. And so just by way of a little bit of explanation on that, I'm going to hit this. You can see basically how the program works. I just want to point out that we are right at our lowest level. If you get 60% of our available points, you're at our lowest level. If you built a commercial space or a retail space and used the Ontario Building Code, for example, as your guide, I'm using Ontario because I have that comparison. I haven't done the BC comparison yet, but it's going to be the same. But if you built your facility meeting every access provision on the Ontario Building Code, now remember, Ontario's been updated. Ontario has the AODA, it has legislation, it has very active community of people with disabilities. If you built it to that standard, you would only get to 40% on the Rick Hansen scale, just by way of comparison. So it's important to understand that we are way beyond code, that we are not mobility centric. We're focused on hearing loss and vision loss issues. We're focused on intellectual disabilities. We're focused on every aspect that we can to make the user experience easier. I said earlier, we break a building into 8 categories: vehicular, exterior, interior services. So interior is the infrastructure, services is the reception desk, and can you actually work there? Could you get down the aisles? Could you participate fully? Of course, washrooms, sanitary facilities. Sometimes places have showers. Wayfinding is a really important thing. It's beyond signage, not just signage. You can use you can use color and texture and even scent in some applications to create meaningful wayfinding. So the RHFAC measures that. Emergency systems. This is unbelievably, it's been completely dropped by all the codes, by most of the standards. The building code works really, really hard at getting me as a wheelchair user into the building. And they don't give a rat's butt about getting me out in an emergency. You ever seen that little plaque? It's beside when you get on an elevator, it's right on the wall. It says, "In case of fire, take stairs." Where's the little plaque that tells me what to do? There's no little plaque. So emergency systems become a really critical piece. It also becomes a barrier to employment if there aren't evacuation plans in place. Then WorkSafe won't let you work there as a person with a disability. So there's all kinds of issues in there. Additional use of space is just if a place has a feature, maybe it's a daycare center, maybe it's a pool, maybe it's a fitness center. We do residential units, but right now we're only working in multifamily. We don't do single family homes at this point. But we also, it would include the common areas, the entry, all those kinds of things. And we do trails and pathways to some extent as well. We have a relationship with CSA because what was really important to us is that the people who take our courses, the people that use the RHFAC understand that it's been vetted and vetted and vetted and checked and then vetted again. But still, if we operated as RHF, then we're still arm's length. So what we wanted to do is first engage the CSA group to help us with the registry, to develop a registry of all these accessible spaces. And secondarily, to host the exam for people who've taken our course through the RHFAC and our associates. For people who take that course, they have the opportunity, once they pass that course, to take a third-party exam administered by CSA. If you pass that exam with 80%, if your understanding of universal design, if your understanding of the community of people with disability, if your understanding of meaningful access versus code access, if you've got that as an operator and you've got industry experience, then you can pass this exam and you'll be considered an RHFAC professional. Not an access consultant, not an access professional, but have the ability to use the RHFAC in an environment to make the rating system work, to make the judgment calls required, and then to post it in the registry. So you're third party from all of us. The program's been internationally recognized. We've been in several international conferences. It's all wonderful, but until we get our own backyard sorted out, I'm not spending that much time on the international stuff, to be honest. Benefits versus costs. This is getting into the weeds a little bit too much. I want to leave some time for questions if there happen to be any. But this one is interesting. And many of you may be advocates, and this might be an interesting set of numbers for you. We engaged HCMA, a major architectural firm in Vancouver. And we said, okay, what would it cost? What's it actually cost to become accessible? Again, we're using national code and Ontario building code because those are the comparisons I actually have right now. We'll do them all. We'll do every province. But that's what we got right now. And we discovered that to get to our 60% level on a new building, on a new construction, this is not existing. Existing is a whole different game. But to increase the average increase to construction costs to achieve gold level compared to the Ontario is 1% of your budget. 1%. That's less than the carrying charges on your money you've got to build whatever you're building. 1%. 0.4, the average increase on construction costs to achieve gold on an office building. If it's focused on that kind of commercial space. So it doesn't cost any money. When we're talking to industry, this is how you get industry involved. They are under the impression it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of change. It doesn't, especially with the RHFAC in hand. I've already said this. I won't bore you with stats. There is a fee. That's to cover the adjudicator and everybody. Basically $2,500 plus the assessor fee. So the assessor will charge separately from this. This is the fee required to get on the registration. The assessor who's doing the work, the RHFAC professional, are completely independent of the foundation. We have no control over them whatsoever. Many of them work for large firms like Stantec or Architectura or what Perkins Will, big firms. Many others are people interested in the field who have hung up shingles as a professional access consultant. Others are professional access consultants who saw the opportunity this creates, became RHFAC designated professionals as part of their professional development, as part of one more thing they could offer to their clients, as part of a beginning to making things more accessible over the long term. And there's labeling. If you want a pretty label in the window, we don't care about that. Oops, changing now. The training requires that people have experience in the built environment. It's really important. Now, this does not, if you are a person with a disability with experience as an access consultant, then we can get you into this course. If you've worked in the field, if you have industry experience, if you understand how codes work, if you understand how to read a code book, you can take this course. You must have some background in it, because the only way to address these big picture issues is with professionals in the field. Right now, the training is offered right across the country and online. Of course, it's install mode right now because of COVID. And right now we have trained and ready to go. 300 people, 320 people have taken the course and passed it. 110 have gone on to the next step of taking the exam and becoming professionals. So where we once had 5 to 10 professional access consultants that could handle the work, what we now have is 110 people across the country, not access professionals, but people able to use the RHFAC to identify what's really there and to move to the next step. So it's really just setting all these companies, all these businesses, all these various outlets, setting them up on a tee for an access consultant to come in and say, well, let me help you. Here's what we do next. Here's your access strategy. Here's your access plan. We don't provide solutions. We just identify what's there. As a spin-off of this, the professionals have created their own accessibility professional network to interact with each other, to understand the nuances of the built environment. Remember, access is a very gray thing. Access is not black and white. There's no yes or no in the world of access. Even if you say, okay, I want my building to be wheelchair accessible. Actually, let's go back a step. What happens when an owner says, I want my building to be accessible? Okay, the architect goes, well, I go to the codes. I'll look at the code. Well, that, of course, we know doesn't work. When someone says they want their building to be accessible, the next question out of your mouth has to be accessible to who? To wheelchair users? People with mobility impairments? People who are deaf, people who are blind, hard of hearing, low vision, environmental sensitivity, intellectual disabilities? Who? Because they're all different disabilities. And if you want me to just go code, then you're not reaching upwards of 60, 70% of your expected users. So it's really important that they understand that. Accessibility Professional Network was a way of getting people to interact with each other, to discuss this gray stuff. I want my place to be wheelchair accessible. Okay, wheelchair accessible to who? To Rick Hansen, the guy who rolled around the world and up the Great Wall of China, and a 1 in 6 slope doesn't slow him down at all. That guy? Or accessible to a wheelchair user like me, who looks at a 1 in 12 ramp and just goes the other way. Even within the groups, there's issues. There's conflicts within our own organizations. For example, wheelchair guys, we don't want carpet on anything. It makes it too hard to push the chair. People hard of hearing want carpet on everything to dampen the sound down and make it easier for them and make their hearing aids more usable. So we have to square that circle. We have to figure out how to make both those groups work, and that takes a professional. But it's an interesting problem. So professionals need to talk to professionals, just like architects talk to architects, lawyers talk to lawyers. So the Accessibility Professional Network is created. You can go in as a professional access consultant. You can go in as an RHFAC professional. You can go in as an observer. You can go in as an advocate. The important thing is to get the information, get the discussion going. And it's an opportunity for people to talk directly to the people doing the assessment. So you can get the actual, whatever your particular issue is, to make sure you get it on the table. What can you do? Well, this slide is really aimed more at people already working in the industry, but if you're available for the training, if you have the background, if you have the built environment experience, then I just didn't mean to do that. Sorry about that. Then by all means take the course. If you want to know just more about universal design and accessibility in general, we have a course called Accessibility 101, just to help you get up to speed on the real issues, how they affect the built environment. What's not here is the real most important way you can help. And we call it the road to policy. And typically people think of that as something much larger. Policy happens at a government level, provincial level, federal level, and of course it does. Policy also happens at every level. So we want you as a consumer to think about the road to policy. Can you get the city you live in to adopt a policy that values accessibility? And it does it by using the RHFAC system. You can measure what's actually there. Can you get a city to commit to requiring an RHFAC rating on a building? Remember, that's what LEED did. LEED came in the early 90s and said, we won't tell you what level of rating you need to get. We're not telling you how sustainable you need to be. All we need to do is get a rating. We need to know where your project sits in the big picture. That's all they wanted to do. They didn't say you had to be bronze or gold or whatever. All the province required in 1993, thank you, Gordon Campbell, was a rating be done. And what that created was that education in the design firms. It made them aware. So having an RHFAC rating on anything they do, anything the city does, it's an important piece, because you can't fix what you don't know is there. It's really important to understand that this happens at every level. Maybe the road to policy in your strata council is an important thing. So take the initiative, do a presentation to your strata council and say, you know what? I know you're not thinking about this, but as the tenants in this building, as the owners of this building age, more and more, there's going to be access issues, and you better be prepared for them. A good example is my mother-in-law. She's 87 years old. She's lived in this building for a decade. When she moved in, her parking was just fine, but now she needs designated parking for a person with a disability. She needs the oversized spot, and there happens to be one right beside her, not being used. put it nearby the building code for this exact reason. Strata Council won't let her use it, even though it's not being used. They need to be educated. The road to policy. It's the road to policy. If we're going to make these changes, we've got the tools in place. The community can act on this. I think as a community, we need to demand more. You know, the old joke about if you want to know how good a if you want to know how good a restaurant is, ask a wheelchair user because he probably came in through the kitchen. Yeah, and that's funny, but it's too true. And why is that okay? Why is it okay for a developer to come in and tell us we're going to build a brand new development, it's going to be this big, and we'll give you 5% or 10%. We're going to make it accessible. Why is that okay? We know it doesn't cost any more money. We know it. We've done the studies. It's not just us, everybody's done at least one study. We know it doesn't cost any more. Why 5%? Why 10%? Why not everything? Why not build everything to a universal standard? Why not build housing in particular to anticipate the needs of the user? Put the backing in the wall. Lower the light switch, raise the AC outlets, do all the infrastructure stuff that costs just a moolah, tons of moolah to change. Like if you design a sink correctly, if you bring the standpipe in at 12 inches instead of 17, which is the standard, it's not against the code to do this. But if you do this now, if I need to put a lowered sink in, either now or 20 years from now, I don't have to rip the wall out, change all the plumbing. I can just lower the sink. So it goes from a $20,000 reno to a $1,000 reno. So it's understanding how this all affects. These are industry programs that will change your life. Imagine if you could just go buy a house like anybody else. I think as a community, we need to demand more. I think as a community, we need to stop. It's not okay to come in the back door. It's not okay to be designated, non-market housing around the back of the building over the dumpsters. It's not okay. I think as a community, we need to, the time is now. National legislation was passed, Accessible Canada Act. We have Accessible Standards Canada, developing standards as quickly as we can. I'm on the board there. We have Barrier Free BC doing amazing work. We have Barrier Free Manitoba, Barrier Free Nova Scotia doing amazing work. The AODA in Ontario is amazing work. The time is now for us as a community to rise up. We've got the tools, we've got the need, we've got the energy. I don't know if there's any questions out there. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and go back to Angela here for a second. I will put this up. If any of you are interested in that cost comparison stuff, we can provide that information happily. And on the website, there's a bunch more information about the numbers behind all this. And that's me if you want to talk to me. And now I'm going to use my techno peasant skills here and hit the stop share button. And lo and behold, I think I'm back. Am I back? I'm back.
Yep,
So I don't know, Angela, if there's questions, or do we have any way of fielding questions? Yeah, I don't see any questions, so part of me is thinking it was either really, really good or really, really bad. I never know which one it is. But I'm going to turn it over to you and ask you to moderate this for me. Is there any questions?
So there's a question in the chat saying, what is their argument that prevents them from offering her that opportunity, re the parking?
Sorry, I missed that.
Donna, can you explain a little bit more on what that was in regards to?
Yes, hello, Brad. It's Donna. I just wondered I guess it's the strata that was not welcoming of your mother-in-law's request for the larger parking spot. What was their argument against offering her that opportunity?
I'm just turning you up so I can hear you a little bit. I'm sorry for the bald head. They had none. They were just saying no. They said no repeatedly. So when they first said no, I thought it's just a misunderstanding. So I wrote on her behalf. I wrote a letter just saying, here's the need. Here's what's happened. She's had a fall and her hips don't work. So this is why it's happening. And they just said no. And so I then presented the numbers saying, this is going to happen a lot more. There's a lot of people in this building. And it was built this way. It was built with all these extra parking spaces, not for the public, but down in the parking levels for this exact reason. And their answer was simply, no, we're not doing it for you, and we're not doing it for anybody else in the building. And that was the end of the discussion. And that's where we're at now. It's not, I can assure you it's not the end of the discussion. But so yeah, so we have to get, it's going to get nasty. It's going to get ugly. Kristen Sharp, and some of you may know her, you know, a Paralympian and someone, a tireless advocate. She's having the same kind of issues with her strata. I think with her was a door. That's what's so frustrating about it.
Yeah.
That there's no reason for it. There's no logic. And that's why we think we have to reach out more. We have to get better education into the owners and the operators and certainly the design community. But at the end of the day, the designers will design what you tell them to design. They're really quite capable. What they tell you every time is, I wanted to put in an elevator, but the owner wouldn't let me. I wanted to put in a better ramp, but this is all they would pay for. So I think, you know, I think Stratas is a really important place to start. I mean, here's a wild idea. We got a few minutes. I think we've got a few minutes. So right now, advocacy groups are approaching residential construction and requiring 10% be accessible or something, 20% in big cases, and it's always considered non-market, which is so frustrating because we're at least 40%. But let's set that aside for a second. What if we did something radical? Instead of requiring 10% be a few suites with grab bars in them, what if the bottom floor of every new condo was designed to be a long-term care facility? It would have 6 apartments and probably 3 caregiver apartments. Every single building would have that. And yes, they'd be accessible, of course, but they'd also be set up as independent suites for privacy, a place where a caregiver could live in-house.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you may be familiar with the False Creek success, the wonderful, it had a name, I can't remember what the name was, but it was like Noble House, but it was Walt Lawrence and those guys developed this amazing False Creek apartment. It supported, I think, 5 or 4 quadriplegics with all the equipment they needed. They got them out of they got high quads out of the hospital, then dependent quads. And they did it in an apartment, right, and with a great view. You know, it was right on in Granville Island.
Beautiful.
After they operated for a year, they discovered the cost of operating in a beautiful apartment, water view apartment, right in Granville Island, with a full-time care assistants and all the things that go with that. It cost half of what it cost to keep them in the hospital.
It's not surprising. No.
And of the 5 original people, they're all gone. They've all moved on. They've got married. 3 of them have children and families. And before they were condemned, they were going to be in long-term care. They're going to be in Pearson, forgotten about, just warehoused away. See ya. If that can work there, why can't it work everywhere? Why don't? And the advantage to the owner is they retain the asset. They still own that, and they'll be able to lease that out to presumably government. You can even move, if you were in that building and you needed care, you can move downstairs instead of moving out of your building. The opportunities are just huge. And again, we need to remember to look at it from an industry perspective. If they can retain that asset, they retain that entire first floor. And they can lease it out to long-term care. And we solved a whole bunch of problems. We have the available space. We keep people in their communities, because that's the whole thing about communities. As soon as we warehouse people away, if the solution is to take older adults and seniors and put them in dark buildings at the end of cul-de-sacs and serviced by minimum wage workers, we just saw how that doesn't work. In very, very stark example of how that doesn't work. But if we could keep people in their community, we keep those threads connected. If mom could still watch her son play or grandson play a baseball game or whatever it is, why do we, as a community, we keep insisting on maybe 10% of it being accessible? And what's happening out there, it's really frustrating, because what's happening out there is the real estate community's got hip to this. So in West Vancouver, I can't remember the name of the development, but it was They actually required 20% be accessible units, whatever that was, which really meant 20% would have grab bars and stuff. And I hate that because I'm a quadriplegic. I can't use grab bars. These hands don't work for grab bars. So the idea that grab bars make it accessible is just frustrating all by itself. But what's happening right now is they will designate that 20%. They did. They designated it, and so they created, and they were all around the back, over the dumpster, over the garage door, or whatever it was. They were all the apartments they didn't want to sell. They called them non-market housing. And so what happened was once they went up for sale, the real estate people bought up all the accessible units. Then took out the grab bars and all the stuff that made it look accessible, all the institutional stuff, and then put it back on the market as a regular old house. So that 20% that they used to have, within 2 years, they were down to 3% that was remaining. This idea of designating 10% of it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It hasn't worked. Anytime, people you can't tell people what they need in their own home. I don't have grab bars in my home. That's me. I hate grab bars. I hate the look of them. I hate the look of a raised toilet seat. I don't have that either. But what I've got is things are built into the wall, things that work for me. But the only reason that works is because the house was built to anticipate the needs of the user. Me. There's backing in all the walls, not just by the bathroom. All the walls need backing. You don't know where you're going to need a grab bar 10 years from now, 20 years from now. There's backing in the whole ceiling because one day you may need an overhead lift that lifts you not just to your bed, but maybe right out to the kitchen or out to the deck. And when you talk to industry about this, they go, oh, no, that would be too expensive. And then you say, well, you know what? We've got a case study in Chilliwack where we took all the lumber that you were putting in trucks and sending to the dump, which, by the way, kicks the snot out of your lead rating when you send stuff to landfill. But they were taking all this lumber and throwing it away. We said, tell you what, hire a laborer, minimum wage laborer, take all that wood and just put it in the walls, pound it in the walls. Doesn't matter what it looks like, it's going to be covered. They found out they saved a lot of money. They didn't have to pay trucking fees. They didn't have to pay landfill fees. It worked out really good. Industry said, oh, wow, what else do you got? And that's what's happening right now. That's why the RHFAC is so important. That's why one of the things that we've got a problem with in our organization is some of the community out there doesn't see how the RHFAC affects them. It doesn't understand it's an industry program. I got a call from, we rated the Saskatchewan legislature, very old building. It got 63 on our scale. So it barely passed. And so I got calls from the local advocates saying, how can you pass a building that doesn't have enough accessible washrooms for women with disability? How can that be accessible? Okay, well, let's look at it for a second. What did the 63 said? That you're barely accessible. That's what it told you. So you're telling me that you have some washrooms, but not enough. So it's not inaccessible. It's not accessible to anyone. Maybe the washrooms aren't great for people using scooters. Maybe I can't recall this particular specific application, but whether it's not great for wheelchair users or scooter users, maybe it's not great for people with vision loss. But it's accessible to somebody. So on a scale of 1 to 5, where would you put it? If 3 would be typically your meeting code. You're not making a big commitment here. What's your meeting code? 5 would be it's outstanding. 0 would be there's no access at all. Well, there's access for somebody. So you can't, if a doorway is wide enough for a high functioning paraplegic or paraplegic to get through, like a Rick Hansen in a skinny little chair, but it's not accessible for someone in a power chair, is it considered inaccessible? Can I just discount the experience of the high functioning paras? Do I just throw them out and say, no, you don't count? We're looking at this. The scale doesn't do that. The scale says, you know what? Your door sucks, but Rick can get through it. A guy in a cane and crutch can get through it. People with vision loss can get through it. People with hearing loss can get through it. So it is not completely inaccessible. So the scale takes that into account. And so I understand the frustration from a consumer perspective. And I welcome and invite Access Now, for example, Maya Ziv's operation. I love what they're doing. It's at a consumer level, it's perfect. I invite her to rate any building that we've rated. And what they'll find is going to be different than what we find, because we're looking at different things. We're looking at infrastructure. We're looking at the industry side of things. We don't pretend that we are creating a consumer scale here. What's important to recognize is what's changing in the industry, how we're moving access up the design food chain, how we're trying to get people to stop this, what they do now, right? I'm preaching to the choir. You know what they do. They design a building, they go get permits, they pour concrete, and then they phone me and say, can we make it accessible? Or they phone you. Can you make it accessible? No, I can't. I can throw on a power door, grab bar, bolt on access, but I can't affect the core design. I can't make the changes that need to be made. That's why I'm sorry, I'm running over time, aren't I? I'm talking.
You're good. We can continue the conversation. I just need to stop the live stream in so we can push it off to the next event. So if you would like to continue the conversation, you totally can. I'm just giving you the heads up that the live stream will be ending.
Thank you for your time. For those of you out there, I don't know who you are. I can't see you, but I thank you for spending some time with me.
Actually happens with the intake. If we think that we may have difficulties, then we'll try and refer you to somebody who will be able to handle things for you. But for most part, we've been able to work with them. As far as age groups are concerned, we have no sort of upper age group. The oldest person we've had on the program is 85. She wanted to learn how to publish a cookery book. So we went through and we managed to help her type up her recipes in Word. And with the help of her granddaughter, the lady managed to take photographs of the cakes, the lovely cakes that she had. Never saw any of them, unfortunately, but we've managed to get the photographs into the documents, and she managed to publish a cookery book on Amazon. So it was a win-win situation for her.
She didn't send you any cake for.
She didn't send any cakes. I was disappointed. I was really disappointed we didn't see any cakes. Anyway, so let's talk about the sort of next process. What happens next? If you're interested in taking part in the program, whether you're someone who wants to refer someone or somebody who wants to take part yourself, you can contact me. I've got the contact details up there on the screen at the moment, and you can either email me or give me a call. A full intake takes place. We'll find out a bit about your disability, find out a bit about your what your list of things are. It may be a good idea to have a think about what it is you would like to do prior to contacting us, so that you've got something in mind about what it is you would like to do. We do a computer setup beforehand to make sure there's no viruses or malware on your computer, so that there's not going to be anything that will interfere with the communications once the classes start. And then what happens is myself and my colleague Khadija will sort of meet together, and we will try and work out who the best volunteer is to be paired with the clients that we're working with. And then the session begins. Okay. And as I said, 12 weeks, once a week for up to 2 hours. And hopefully we'll be able to cover the majority of the things that you would like to cover during the course of those sessions. As far as the sort of benefits and what's happened to people in the past, we've managed to get people back into the workplace, we've managed to get people back into college and university, and also the same for the volunteers as well. We've managed to get people back into the workplace, and also as far as volunteers are concerned, when they take part in the program, they will actually get a telephone reference after 4 weeks, and they'll get a work reference after 12 weeks. So it's a win-win situation for them as well, taking part. Okay, I think I've covered everything so far. I think that's what I'll finish there for the moment. I don't know if we're taking questions just now, or whether we're taking questions later on. Do you have an idea, Nate, or you want to take questions?
Well, feel free. If there are some questions, we could certainly take them now and then break up the different questions between the participants of today's webinar, should they have any. So, Emily, if there are any questions either in the chat or if you or anybody on your team has any.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we're looking okay on questions for now. Let me just double check the YouTube to make sure there aren't any that have gone through on there. Yeah, I think we're good to go, and then maybe we can check back in after the rest of any portions that you guys have, and then
Okay.
and see if we've got any more, unless Alexandra has any more at the moment.
Okay. Well,
I just got one question that I got to answer, so thank you.
okay. Well,
Perfect.
I'll let you continue, Nate, then. Okay.
Okay. Just got to bring up this presentation. All right. Okay. Can you see that? Yes, Gordon? Yeah. Okay. So again, thanks everybody. Appreciate the opportunity to share today on, wow, webinar and YouTube. And are we Facebook Live too as well, Emily?
No Facebook Live this time.
All right. Are we on TikTok? Are we TikTok living?
TikTok Live. That'll be our next venture.
I'm way too old for TikTok Live. Good Lord. So again, thanks everybody. So my name's Nate Toves, and I'm the marketing manager for the WorkBC Assistive Technology Services Program. Being today is National Indigenous Day in our great country, Mindy works out of the Penticton Indian Band office, where she operates the Working Together and other programs. So of course it's a national holiday for her as well. So I'm taking her place. So I'm going to be going through some of the slides here on the Working Together program, be able to answer as many questions should you have them. And if not, we'll get the right answers for you from the people that operate the program. And then I'll be transitioning into the WorkBC Assistive Technology Services program. And, you know, Gordon had mentioned the term, what was the term? Overlap. So there's going to be a little overlap in what I talk about here, but I'll try and go into just maybe a little more detail on a couple of the slides here as it relates to some of the different things that we do and some of the different programs that we run, not only in BC, but if you have friends or family and contacts in other provinces, we have offices in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia. So we haven't quite conquered the entire country, but we're working on it. So Neil Squire is a Canadian national not-for-profit organization and a registered charity that empowers Canadians with disabilities through the use of computer-based assistive technologies, research development, and various employment programs. So we call it, or I call it, our 4 pillars of our organization. So Gordon, you know, started with the Neil Squire story. You know, our organization started from a tragedy, if you will. You know, Neil and his car accident, and again, 1980, so 41 years ago, technology was obviously really in its infancy as it relates to many of the things that we can do now with, you know, zeros and ones as it relates to digital technology. But on Neil's side that day was his cousin, Bill Cameron, and Bill was an engineer. And as Neil was starting to lose his ability to speak, because any muscle you don't use, you lose, and your voice box and your larynx are no different, Bill started working on a device using sip and puff, so breaths in and out, short sips and long sips, and short puffs and long puffs, using Morse code, so dot dash technology. That piece of paper hanging from the monitor there is actually his cheat sheet for that Morse code alphabet, and he would sip and puff the letters into words, into sentences, and it would appear on that screen, or he could get it to print out on that modified teletype device, actually a dot matrix printer. So anyways, it took a while to get everything going, and it changed Neil's life quite dramatically. Not only could he communicate with those around him that loved him, his mom, his dad, his family, but the ability now to communicate with caregivers, the doctors, the nurses, the physiotherapists, the acupuncturists, the occupational therapists that were working with Neil. So it made an absolute huge difference in his life. Now, unfortunately, in 1984, we lost Neil, and it was obviously a sad day, and he died very quickly. Actually, there was lots of great stuff going on. Expo 86 was in the horizon, and the team had expanded. In fact, the gentleman who you saw in the video, our executive director, Dr. Birch, he's only been our executive director since I think about 2005 or something like that. But there's pictures of him bedside with Neil between 1980 and 1984. Gary was a electronics engineer, working on some real cool brain wave interface stuff with computers like 40 years ago. Katrina, our longest standing employee and occupational therapist, she was bedside with Neil between 1980 and 84. So those three had a long history together. But again, so 4 pillars: research, development, and innovation; digital literacy, which Gordon just brilliantly shared with us; our employment programs. The employment program is called Working Together. I'm going to go into that. And then our superpower, the thing that weaves through all our different programs, is assistive technology. And that's how we were able to earn this program through the province of BC called Work BC Assistive Technology Services. And we'll cover that in a bit. So from an innovation standpoint, our research and development group works to create accessible and affordable technologies and solutions to enable people with disabilities to achieve their potential in educational, vocational, and personal pursuits. So while our focus in our organization is digital literacy, employment, and assistive technology, we know that people have lives too. And sometimes the work that we're doing is just to help somebody have a better quality of life, not just employment and other things. So we believe in that very strongly. So Gordon covered that. The Neil Squire Society has been providing volunteer-driven computer skills tutoring since its inception. We provide basic computer skills training as well as expert staff and volunteers to help people with disabilities find and use the appropriate assistive technology. So that's a really big part of who we are and what we do. The program is called Distance Computer Comfort. As Gordon mentioned, the Computer Comfort program is really the ability, same program, it's just that we teach some people in person at our Burnaby office. Obviously with COVID, that has impacted that. So we've transitioned everybody to a virtual model at this point. And then we also have another program called Digital Jumpstart, which is an online program that helps people with disabilities improve their digital literacy so they have the confidence to take their next step. So it's a program that we've partnered with other technology partners and help of the federal government as it relates to funding for computers and trainers and just the time to do that. So these 2 programs mesh nicely together. And so speaking of one of our technology partners, TELUS, and their Tech for Good program was a big part of that. They helped people get iPads or computers into their hands for those that weren't in a position to get those themselves. So that was a real big addition to some of the other work that we were doing for a period of time. So from employment, we know how important and central employment is to all our lives. What's your name and what do you do is often how we greet people. So unfortunately, Canadians with disabilities are less likely to be employed than those without disabilities. In my next presentation, you'll see that number might be as much as 50% more likely not to have those same opportunities. And it's due to limited opportunities and lack of access to assistive technology devices in the workplace. And we understand the importance of working with both individuals and employers in order to achieve success, and our programs reflect this approach. And that's so true. And we've seen a real movement. I've been with the organization about 6 years now, and certainly in that short period of time that I've been with Neil Squire, I've really seen the discussion ramp up as it relates to employers large and small in their need to diversify their workforce and be more inclusive in their hiring and their hiring practices. So I think we're moving in the right direction. As it relates to assistive technology, we're the leader in Canada in assistive technology. As I mentioned, it is our superpower. We don't believe anybody does it to the degree we do, from innovation right through trialing and implementation. So we're involved pillar to post with some assistive technologies, not only in the implementation of it and the training and the follow through, but actually in the design phase, in the inventing phase, in the discussion phase before the product's gone to market. And our goal is to create affordable assistive technology devices that give people with disabilities greater control of their lives. And it's through the offering of immersive programs that teach people with disabilities how to use technology and succeed both at home, as we mentioned, and in the workplace. And we provide ergonomic solutions and access to assistive technologies that remove barriers for people with disabilities. You know, about 70% of us nowadays are tied to a desk, sometimes literally, it seems, especially with COVID, where, you know, you're working from home or even when you're working from the office. A lot of us are in a desk environment, so chronic pain is often a situation a lot of us deal with. And so ergonomic solutions are key to that. You know, on our research, innovation, and development team is Makers Making Change. And that's another Neil Squire program. And Makers connects makers to people with disabilities who need assistive technologies. What we're doing here is often a lot more one-off or multi-off solutions, not something that's, you know, probably going to be commercially built and there's going to be thousands or millions of them made in a factory. We have a library of open source assistive technologies designed both by our staff and our community of volunteers and makers and tinkerers around the world. And this includes documents where to source parts, provide downloadable 3D printable files, code and assembly instructions. So it's really turnkey in how you implement and build these devices. And anyone can build these devices, but we work a lot with students, engineers, and other maker volunteers to help build these solutions for people that need assistive technology in their community. You can find, for those of you taking notes and are interested in this, you can find all this stuff under makersmakingchange.com, and there's some really cool stuff on that website. And we offer a platform. It's really a repository for all these designs that, again, are open source. So they can be approved upon, they can be modified depending on the situation. And we offer this platform for makers, which are engineers, hobbyists, students, corporations that want to get involved in doing good with their staff and from a volunteer perspective, to volunteer their time to make access solutions for our projects library. So really cool stuff there. Neil Squire Solutions, I'm myself and Gordon are both also team members of Solutions. And it's a team of occupational therapists and assistive technology specialists who find the most effective ergonomic or assistive technology solutions to target each individual's needs, specific needs. We offer these services on a fee for service basis to individual and corporate clients. We do a lot of work with insurance companies, helping people get back to work, with their extended benefit situation maybe. We work with different corporations where getting their client or their staff members set up properly, ergonomically from the start, when they start with the company is a big part of their process. And that really helps avoid long-term problems for those staff members as it relates to ergonomics. So this is a great program, and it's another way that we drive revenue within our organization. It's called a social enterprise, where you have a revenue generating entity under the umbrella of our not-for-profit organization. And that just helps bring more money into our programs to help people with disabilities at the end of the day. So Solutions has been about a 15-year journey so far for the Neil Squire Society. So now this is the program that I'm here to talk about in this part of the presentation, is the Working Together program. And it's a unique and comprehensive and participant-centered program designed to develop the skills required to help individuals achieve their employment goals. And again, this is a federally funded program that we run in our offices throughout BC and or throughout Canada. So the Working Together program is unique as it is participant-centered. So it really is all about the individual. It's not a cookie-cutter type program, highly individualized, comprehensive, and flexible. We use a team of case managers, career facilitators, and job developers that will support participants during the continuum of services that they receive from us at Neil Squire. And again, the Working Together program provides services to participants in 5 provinces, BC, Saskatchewan, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia, and just starting to open up, I guess, Gordon, in Alberta and Manitoba. We opened offices in those 2 provinces in the pandemic, or during the pandemic, and just starting to deliver a wider variety of services in those offices. So how does the program work? Well, again, it's individualized program plans or group-based learning environment, online options for group and individuals, career and personal development, wellness for work and job search, support customized to meet that individual's needs. Often there's wage subsidies available for employers that will take on one of our participants. Certainly continuous support from the team and the career professionals that we employ. And should that individual have a disability or barrier that requires an ergonomic or assistive technology assessment and solution, we provide that through our team approach. Suitable candidates, well, there's a long list there, right? It's, as Gordon had said, there's a wide variety of people. You know, people with disabilities come from all walks of life. There's a tremendous amount of movement in the world as it relates to Black Lives Matter and Indigenous Lives Matter. And certainly the Neil Squire Society believes in diversity and inclusion to its core. But disability doesn't care, right? Disability doesn't care where you're from. Disability doesn't care what your socioeconomic background is. Disability doesn't care whether you're rich or poor. It can affect anybody at any time. And in fact, about 80% of people with a disability were not born with the disability, and it happened through the course of life, through disease or a life event, an accident, a car accident, workplace accident. So again, people with disabilities, you know, come from all walks of life, and there's quite a long list on the screen there for you. So eligible participants, the Opportunities Fund participant consent form provides the following eligibility criteria for an eligible participant: a self-declared disability. It's not only somebody with a persons with disabilities designation. They require assistance to prepare for, obtain, and keep employment or self-employment, and legally entitled to work in the country. So permanent residents and so forth are more than welcome to apply to the program. So the Working Together program, here's kind of a chart, if you will, as to how it works. A client, you know, they meet a case manager. If they're not job ready, then there's a variety of different things that we can do. Maybe they'd be better off in a different program because they're not quite ready yet. Maybe they need some training from Gordon and the team at Computer Comfort or Distance Computer Comfort. Their 8-week program, possibly they need some ergonomic or assistive technology solutions. And then after the 8-week program, back to the job developer to work on a program. If they come into the program job ready, again, we're going to work with them on an individualized basis. They're going to work with the job developer. Again, they might need an ergonomic solution, and the employer may qualify for a wage subsidy to assist in that first 8 to 12 to 20 weeks of employment. And that can make a huge difference in the ability for that employer to bring that individual on. You know, when it comes to the career and personal development, some of the modules that we include are introducing career development and exploration, developing personal awareness and of interest and skills. You know, at the end of the day, when I've had some conversations with people in this program, whether it be participants or the staff members that deliver it, who cares what you can't do? Let's focus on what you can do. Let's focus on the skills you have. Let's focus on the passions that you have, and let's work towards something that that fills those desires and needs. And very often that allows us to help somebody in participating in career planning and get an assessment of their interests, making career decisions that align with that, developing an action plan to accomplish that for employment, researching the labor market to see what's out there, provide job finding assistance using a variety of strategies: cold calling, informational interviews, online job searching, reaching out into your network. Many people get their next job through somebody they know in their circle of life. Implementing assistive technology and ergonomic solutions, as we've discussed, resume and cover letter writing, and then participating in mock employment interviews, practicing, role playing. That can really help lower the anxiety for many people if they're struggling through that part of the process. Wellness for work, again, modules introducing the concept of wellness for work, providing skills necessary to understand your health and wellness and when it's time to say no or when you can take on more. understanding how to mitigate your disability at work, chronic pain and self-management, enhancing group dynamics for effective teamwork, maximizing your energy through healthy sleep. These are all such important things for all of us, not just people with a disability. Becoming comfortable with decision making and problem solving, and building your self-esteem and self-confidence. And for all of us, you know, when our confidence is taking a beating, it affects a lot of the things that we do. And when we do great things and get told that we're doing great things, that really helps our self-esteem and self-confidence. And we've seen how important that is with working with some of our participants for sure. Job development, we use a variety of different strategies here after we've got that person determined what sort of work they want to do or what passions they want to follow. Generating customized employment opportunities, and that's working with an employer and maybe job carving a job where maybe there's a few, you know, things in a job description that the person really doesn't have any interest to do or can't do for a variety of reasons. But that doesn't mean that there isn't still an opportunity there. Integrate the wage subsidy aspect to this, gaining the work experience necessary to land a quality opportunity, assisting with integration into the workplace, ensuring the participant has the required on-the-job support from the employer and through their training mechanisms. Discussing participant progress with the employer. We believe in a strong three-way relationship between ourselves, our participant and client, and the employer that we're working with, and working to maintain the employment. We don't want this to be a 12-week or 20-week thing. We want this to be a start of a great career or stepping stones to other opportunities within that organization. And we often find that for our clients. So development of the work experience and how the subsidies work. So working together offers modest funds to subsidize work experience. What it means is often we'll pay a portion of somebody's hourly or monthly salary, hourly wage or monthly salary. And the subsidy is a share of the wages paid by the employer, with the amount and length being determined on a case-by-case basis. Factors that are considered in determining the subsidy include the skills and experience of the candidate, and the needs and demands of the job. And subsidies are only offered to support positions that will continue beyond the subsidized period. Again, we don't want this to be nor does the government, to be a 20-week program. We want that person to have a solid quality opportunity. But however, part-time and full-time employment are eligible. However, in the case of youth in school, no more than 15 hours per week is permitted, so that they can really knock it out of the park as it relates to education. So we talk about an individualized approach, and the curriculum for participants in the individualized program will vary depending on the components of the program they need, which will be determined by the case manager during intake. And in the individualized program, participants only complete the components they need to achieve their goals. So we try and avoid a tremendous amount of repetition. If somebody doesn't need help in certain areas, let's spend more time in the areas that they do. So again, a real customized approach. Creating a team environment. It's really a team process with the Working Together program. It's a team of career facilitators, case managers, and job developers that support participants during the entire continuum of services, regardless of the type of programming they're enrolled in. And locally, staff have access to team supports for clients, and group classes are offered via Zoom, obviously through the pandemic. And some of that might stay depending on the situation. Certainly, while there's not a lot of great things that have come out of the pandemic, the ability for us not to have to leave our homes to do learning and participate in some work activities certainly is beneficial, and keeps you out of your car for hours at a time. And there's value there, I guess, right? Feedback and evaluations. Our team of career facilitators, case managers, and job developers will support participants during the entire type of the programming they're rolled in. And then we do weekly check-in sessions that will be scheduled and facilitated by the career facilitator, and sessions will be attended by the case managers and the job developers to stay up to date on the client's process. So again, it's truly a team approach, which our clients tell us they love that. We have a variety of webinars and lunch and learns that you can attend. You can find this under on our neilsquire.ca website, and it's under Get Involved, the main tab, Get Involved. And there's a variety of different webinars that the Working Together team and the WorkBC Assistive Technology Services team put together. And this program is funded through the Government of Canada by the Canada's Opportunities Fund. And I guess it couldn't have a better name than Opportunities Fund, because that's truly what we're trying to provide for Canadians with disabilities and barriers to employment is opportunities for growth. And that's that part of the presentation. Any questions?
That was awesome. It was so great to hear, especially I know that the remote aspect of a lot of programs is something that we've also talked a ton about. Myself and one of my colleagues, Michelle, were thinking about how to kind of work through the ease into a new normal. And it was really interesting to think about how many opportunities were created because of the move to an online platform, especially for those who were immunocompromised previously, and this kind of like opened a whole new avenue. So
yeah,
that's something I always love to hear about, kind of the good that's come out of that move.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's face it, we never like to lump any of our clients or people with disabilities into one group, because they're all individuals as well. But certainly for some of our clients, getting to and from work is one of the biggest barriers. And if they can now do that from home without having to engage in a long and arduous commute, why wouldn't we embrace that? So, I'm glad to see that sort of momentum throughout the country and around the world, for that matter, where an employer has realized, okay, yes, you can work from home. Yes, you can be productive. Yes, we can trust that you're going to get the work done. And if not, we're going to have a chat about it, because the work has to get done, and everybody understands that too. So
totally.
Right.
And I think it's also important to think about the opportunities being, if you've got somebody who's got a disability but has the knowledge, if they weren't able to get into the workplace, working from home, it's presenting them to the potential employers as well as an option. So you're getting a lot more variety as well, I think.
Agreed.
Totally. I did have one question, if that was okay. I was wondering what your volunteer position like opportunities look like, and yeah, what kinds of positions are available for those wanting to get involved and volunteer with Neil Squire.
I'll take that if you want. Okay. So at the moment, if COVID wasn't a factor, there's a distance computer comfort program is always on the lookout for volunteers. And what happens is they would work with the clients to do the computer tutoring. Computer comfort is always on the lookout for clients as well. Once the office gets open again, we'll be doing some face-to-face work with the clients as well, so that they'll be operating in the same sort of levels. And the Makers Making Change program as well is another one that's is on the lookout for volunteers as well. So if you're working with a maker organization, or if you've got a sort of technical ability and want to try and help them build the devices that are available, they actually do these build-a-thons, and they send out the parts to people, and they'll do, they actually one of the big things that's happened over the past 12 months is they've ran build-a-thons actually online. So they send these parts out to people, and then they have somebody guiding them through how to build the parts online. So a particular time they'll do a Zoom session, and while they're doing the Zoom session, they'll have somebody building this, and then they'll have other people guiding them through how to for them to actually work. And it's been amazing watching some of the things that they've been building. So they build the switches for gaming and things like that. It's really, really interesting.
Oh, awesome. That's so cool. The aspect of being able to kind of get the hands-on experience while while yeah, keeping it safe and getting that knowledge through the online format. That's so cool.
Yeah, the ability for people to overcome all sorts of challenges, and a whole bunch of us certainly had to do that through the pandemic, and will continue to do so for some time, it looks like. So it is amazing, right, how we've all come together, right?
Perfect. Thank you so much for those answers. Let me just double check and make sure that there aren't any questions on our YouTube stream. I think we're looking good there.
All right. So I'll bring up my last presentation here. All right. You guys can see that? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, good stuff. Okay, so, well, we've done the Neil story, so we're not going to do that again. So again, hey, thanks everybody. It's back to me. If you're tired of hearing my voice, I apologize. I'll try and change it a little bit. No, I won't.
We're never tired of hearing you, Nate.
Oh, that's good, man. I think my wife is from time to time, but okay. So now I'm going to be Nate, taking off my working together hat and putting on my Neil Squire WorkBC Assistive Technology Services program hat. So WorkBC Assistive Technology Services launched in April of 2019. We just started our third year. It's actually the third iteration of this sort of assistive technology program over the last decade. It's now affiliated with the WorkBC employment centers, as you can gather. But let me make this important distinction for you. If you're not in the workforce and you're trying to get a job, find a job, you do that through WorkBC Employment Services, or you can do it through Neil Squire, through the program we just discussed. If you're applying for employment through WorkBC Employment Centers and have a disability or a barrier, they're going to refer you to us through a mechanism in the WorkBC offices to get an assessment, for us to, again, on an individualized basis, understand what your barrier is or barriers, how it would impact your work-related activities, how it would impact job search, how it would impact the training you might be put through WorkBC. And then we'll make all those recommendations and provide the assistive technology you need, arrange to have it delivered, set up, you trained on it, and on, or have it implemented on the job site so that you can do all those things related to employment. But we also can help people that are already in the workforce. Might be some of you on the call today, might be people you know in the community, your sister, brother, cousin, your uncle, that lady that used to play hockey with, or that guy you used to play softball with, that's already in the workforce, employed full or part-time or self-employed, but they have a barrier caused by a disability, chronic pain, or an old injury. So some of these stats, or some of the latest stats on the first paragraph from the province of BC, over 926,000 people over the age of 15, about 25% of that population identifies having some sort of disability or barrier. Again, people self-identify as having a barrier. There's no need to have a persons with disability designation, although if they do, that's okay too. They very well would like to qualify as well. Now, these employment numbers are not up to date, but that ratio is about the same. So despite the high rates of post-secondary education completion rate, and in BC, people with disabilities have the highest rate across the country, the unemployment rate for people with disabilities is about 50% higher than the non-disabled population. So that's something we're certainly working to change. Lots of myths when it comes to disability, certainly on the employer end. I've heard employers say, well, if I hire somebody with a disability, my WorkSafe premiums, my workers' compensation or WorkSafe premiums will go up, and that's just not the case. Or that they think they might require special business insurance if they hire somebody with a disability, and that's not the case either. Or that if they hire somebody with a disability, accommodating that individual would be cost prohibitive. And while there's certainly some cases that may be more than the average, on average, it's only about $500 to accommodate somebody with a barrier. So what we're going to do is provide you some education on that today and share with you a government-funded program called WorkBC Assistive Technology Services that's put in place to help employees and employers get the workplace accommodations they need. So we love acronyms in this industry, right, Gordon? So I'll be shortening it to WorkBC ATS to save my poor voice, if you don't mind. So WorkBC ATS provides assistive technology or supports, we'll cover that in a bit, to individuals with disabilities to assist them to gain and sustain employment. So individuals is the first key word. It's always an individual that applies to the program, not their employer. Even when we talk about modifying the built environment of creating an accessible washroom, a hearing loop, or buttons to automatically open doors or what have you. It's always the individual that applies, and then we'll work with their employer and or the building owner if that's a third party. To assist them to gain and sustain employment, as I mentioned on the top of this, we work with the 102 WorkBC centers. There's one virtually in every community in the province or multiple in the larger communities. And our focus is people going through the WorkBC process, trying to gain employment and enter into the labor market, or those already in the labor market, employed full or part-time or self-employed. Our focus is small business. In Canada, and in BC, there's a law called the duty to accommodate. So most employers, certainly the larger ones, they have a very high duty to accommodate the needs of their staff. But the smaller businesses, especially through COVID, in many cases, they would struggle with a financial hardship in some cases to accommodate the needs of their staff. So we try and fill that gap to keep people from falling through the cracks, if you will. So, if you've got a friend that works at the provincial or federal government or the Royal Bank or Canfor and they have a bad back and need an ergonomic chair, this program is not for them. Their employer would love to hear that they have a bad back, believe it or not, so that they can actually accommodate them and get them the tools that they need. But if your friend works at, XYZ company that's, 12 or 20 or 25 employees, under 50 is what small business is in BC, that employer might struggle a lot more to buy a $1,000 ergonomic chair and a $1,500 sit-to-stand station. They might very well qualify needing help with ergonomics because they work in a smaller company. Work-related assistive technology solutions are based on individual requirements and work situations. Again, like the other program we were talking about, working together, it's not cookie cutter. Nothing that we do is cookie cutter. Everything is with this WorkBC ATS program. The first thing after all the paperwork and somebody's approved into the program is an assessment by one of our occupational therapists, a thorough assessment to understand that individual's barriers and how it impacts their employment-related activities. And we provide these services throughout the province, either in person, via outreach, or virtually. This is a BC only program, unlike the Working Together program or Gordon's Distance Computer Comfort, where we run those across the country. This is specifically a BC only program. WorkBC ATS are available to individuals who have a work-related barrier due to a disability. We've covered that, or a functional limitation. Chronic pain or an old injury is how you would read that. Somebody that would be a great applicant for this program would be that friend of yours that maybe a few years ago was in a car accident or had a work safe situation, but now they're done with the insurance process. They're no longer case managed by WorkBC or by ICBC, or no longer case managed by WorkSafe or the insurance company at work. And they're just trying to get on with their life and their job. But maybe they have issues that are going to last for years, or maybe a lifetime. Maybe they've lost an arm, or the use of an arm, or the use of an eye, or what have you. And so they need an accommodation. As long as they're done with the insurance process, our program has what's called last resort funder status. So we have to be the last in line to pay for things. So they must be done with those insurance companies, and then we can definitely get in and make an impact. This may include barriers related to traveling to and from work. So as I mentioned, this program is not for people that work for really large employers, because the employer has a duty to accommodate their needs, but there's two exceptions. And one is hearing aids, because an employer does not have to pay for hearing aids, and there's no coverage in BC for hearing aids in our MSP. And even if you have a good benefit program, you likely only get $250 to $500 a year. So two exceptions in our programs are hearing aids and to and from work. Once we all, or most of us, have to get back into the office on a more regular basis, it isn't likely that your employer is going to pick you up on his or her way to work, right? So we have to get ourselves to and from work. So if you know somebody in a wheelchair, a manual wheelchair, as an example, or a power wheelchair, and they would benefit from using their own vehicle to get to and from work, or they need their vehicle in the day-to-day activities of their job, this program may be able to help pay for the conversion of that vehicle for hand controls for gas and brake, because they don't use their feet for gas and brake. May be able to provide ramp access if it's a van, lift access if it's a pickup. Now, the individual must supply the vehicle, and it has to be a vehicle the program deems A, roadworthy, and B, able to be modified. But we can help with the tremendous cost in the modifications of that vehicle. These programs take some time to complete those modifications, but we've done a few already, and we'll certainly do a few more over the next few years of the program. And we've made a huge difference in the lives of many people as it relates to that program, for sure. And it also can include modifying a manual wheelchair. So adding power to somebody's manual chair to assist them to getting to and from transit, or from transit to work, or maybe from home right to work, depending on the situation. To be eligible, a client must meet basic Work BC eligibility criteria and require the employment-related disability supports to participate in Work BC employment services. So what that means is, if your disability or barrier is impacting your ability to participate in job search, participate in the training programs they're putting you into, or obviously to accomplish the tasks in the job that they get you, that's the point where the Work BC Employment Center is going to refer that individual to us for an assessment and an assistive technology recommendation and implementation. Or again, avoid the loss of their existing employment, self-employment, or volunteer work, or to start imminent employment. Again, folks on the call today and in YouTube land and in Zoom land with us, we ask you to think about other people you know in the community that might have a chronic pain situation, might struggle with a barrier as it relates to their employment or self-employment. And if there's an assistive technology that can help them minimize or overcome that barrier, we'd love you to refer them to this program, and maybe we'll be able to make a real difference in their life. Students may be eligible if they're a full-time student in their last year of high school or a post-secondary program. Now, again, if they're not case managed by Work BC, then they also have to be in the workforce. And we know it's very common for people to be in the education system and the workforce, right, Gordon? Very common for that, as BC is an expensive place to live. So often people will be working at the same time. And the tool that we have to get somebody is to, minimize an employment-related activity. If it also helps them in their pursuit of education, then that's kind of a bonus, right? We've designed dozens and operated dozens and dozens of programs in different provinces in the country. And when we do, they're flexible in the way that we provide these ERD supports tailored to the client's individual needs, not cookie cutter. Efficient and effective. Our application process is simple and straightforward. It's not written in a bunch of legalese. While the program is delivered in English, if somebody English is not their first language, we have people from 4 different continents that work out of our Burnaby office. We speak 20 different languages, so we can definitely help with that. It's certainly accountable in the way we implement and develop and assess the AT services in an expert way. It's an occupational therapist and an assistive technology specialist that makes the recommendation. So these are professionals in their craft. It's definitely results focused in that we support a truly inclusive British Columbia. It is, we do provide consistent service across the province with our virtual service delivery. While the pandemic certainly threw a monkey wrench into everybody's world, we've been providing distance computer comfort training now for over a decade as technologies allowed. As technologies allowed, we've developed and improved many different best practices and modalities on distance assessment. So we were able to keep going quite well. Thank you very much through the pandemic. Our biggest challenge was getting the thing to somebody, with supply chains being damaged and or interrupted, and the worry of people and their safety of having strangers in their house. Well, there's still that worry and fear to some extent. We found ways to do it safely with masks and sanitization. So we're moving along rather rapidly. Some of the supports, if you're taking notes, AskJan.org is a website in the States, the Job Accommodation Network. Shows you an exhaustive list of the different assistive technologies available. We do a lot of ergonomics, as I mentioned. About 70% of us are tied to a desk these days, so supportive ergonomic chairs made for that person. Sit-to-stand stations, keyboards, mice, software for input, like Gordon was sharing with Dragon, naturally speaking, lighting systems for people with PTSD or anxiety or those sort of things, restorative supports, canes, crutches, orthotics, prosthetics can be covered in this program. ASL, interpreting and captioning for people that are profoundly hard of hearing or deaf, especially as they're going through the Work BC process. Hearing aids, again, as I mentioned, $1,500 to $5,000 a year. Hearing aids are a ton of money for most British Columbians. No coverage through MSP, as I mentioned. Virtually, most people don't have much coverage, even if they have any, through extended benefits. So hearing aids are a big part of this program. I mentioned briefly workplace access and modification, hearing loop, accessible washroom, ramps, those buttons that open doors automatically, modifications at a sink as an example for somebody in a wheelchair, whole bunch of stuff, vehicle mods and wheelchair modifications. Go to Google and look at Google adding power to a manual wheelchair. You'll find some cool stuff. This is a picture of our lab in Burnaby. There's only one other that we're aware of like it in the province, and that's at GF Strong Rehab Center in Vancouver. We can actually separate this thing into two distinct areas with one of those heavy-duty accordion room dividers. We have 100 different devices and software, keyboards, mice, sit-to-stand stations, ergonomic chairs. We do a lot of work with CNIB for low vision products like handheld magnifiers and low vision software, dozens of different software for speech recognition, word prediction software, JAWS screen readers for people with that are blind or have vision challenges. So just so many different things that we have at our disposal there. The facilities throughout the province have been deemed fully accessible by the Rick Hansen Foundation Accessibility Certification process. And when you think of these, 5 bullets, it's really all about how do we run this program to provide a high level of service for our clients. And then the bottom one I mentioned, the program's delivered in English, but we never want language to be a barrier to access to the program. So some success stories. This is Tony. Now, if you know what Starline Windows is, they're a huge window manufacturer in the province. They employ hundreds of people. If Tony had a bad back, they're too big of an employer for us to provide funding for an ergonomic chair. They would have had to do that, but that wasn't what Tony's challenge was. Tony has hearing loss in both ears from tinnitus or tinnitus, so he needed hearing aids. Again, no coverage provincially. He might have had some coverage through work, through his extended benefits. He's a general manager. He probably makes enough money that he at least had money to contribute to the program, because the province does ask us to measure that with people. But clearly we were able to bring some help to Tony and his family, and he qualified. So he says that my hearing amplifiers have greatly improved my ability to perform all my duties at work. And he could not imagine going back and not using them for work. You think about a general manager, he's communicating with staff, clients, suppliers. They have on-site manufacturing there in Langley. So there was a lot of stuff going on, and his lack of hearing was really impacting his ability to do his work. This is Karen. Karen's an administrator at her local church. She also does self-employment. She helps people with disabilities find employment. I know Karen in the community. Karen has cerebral palsy and was born with scoliosis of the back. So when Karen just sits in a normal chair, her body leans to one side. So you can see the special wing that we have on that chair, which helps keep Karen upright, which helps relieve a lot of her chronic pain. From her cerebral palsy, she has kind of shakiness or tremors. So we got a special keyboard with spaced out keys and a very high-end word prediction software called WordQ. So Karen doesn't have to type as much as normal, and she might type 1 or 2 letters, and then the word prediction software will determine and give her options of other words, and she just has to do a mouse click and an enter, and it just reduces the amount of typing dramatically. And Karen says, with these supports, it makes work more equitable so that people with disabilities can participate in the workforce. And I really like Karen. In fact, she's one of my heroes, and she's out there every day doing amazing work. This is Melanie. Melanie works in the WorkBC world, in the ecosystem of WorkBC, and she's a specialized employment counselor. So most often she's working with people with disability, and she has hearing loss in both ears, which was exacerbated by having to work remotely. So she got a set of Bluetooth compatible hearing aids, a Bluetooth monitor to so that what's happening on the computer is fed directly into her hearing aids, and a partner mic. So something that like a pen or something that somebody can clip to their lapel. And when she is working with people in person again, they can clip that to their lapel. Their voice gets transmitted from the microphone on their lapel directly into Melanie's hearing aids. And it makes just a big difference for her. And it's, again, her comment was her overall stress level has decreased considerably due to the quality and level of adaptability in their hearing aid technology she received. And it's allowed her to work much better and hear more clearly in the work office. So we have locations throughout the province. I'm in Burnaby. We have one in Victoria, Nanaimo, and Kelowna. I'm currently talking to you from the dining room table office. Tomorrow or Wednesday morning for my networking meetings at 6:45 a.m. I'm in the second bedroom office. And after this meeting, because it's so beautiful out, I'm going to go to the patio office, and you all know exactly what I'm talking about. All right, to apply, and we're just right on time, perfect. That's kind of a long URL. If you're going through the WorkBC process to gain access to the labor market, and you identify as having a disability, they'll refer you to us through a mechanism at the WorkBC office. For those of you or for people you know in the community that are already in the workforce, that's a bit of a long URL to jot down. So here's what you do. Go to workbc.ca, go to that main website, go to one of the main tabs, which is Employment Services. The third one down is WorkBC Assistive Technology Services. The first step people have is to get their BCE ID, the electronic version of their identification. If they already have that, they go straight to the WorkBC Assistive Technology Services application, which is very basic. Again, who are you? Where do you live? What do you do for work? How does your disability or barrier impact your employment or self-employment or even dedicated volunteer related activities? What tools do you have at your disposal? And then that information comes to us. There may be a little back and forth with determining, job qualifications or employment verifications and so forth. And then from there, once somebody's approved into the program, again, our first step is an assessment to get a better idea and determine the exact needs of the client to help them minimize or overcome their disability or barrier. And that's really what it is. Once somebody's approved into the program, we're reaching out to them for that first step in the first 24 to 72 hours. So this is not one of these programs where you apply today and maybe somebody will reach out to you in a couple months. We're able to bring people in for the intake and assessment phase rather quickly. Now, sometimes the thing that we have to get somebody, if it's an ergonomic chair as an example, or a sit-to-stand workstation, we're dealing with companies all across the country on that, and that could be a 2 to 6 week delivery, and we really can't impact that. So we do work closely with organizations that provide a variety of different assistive technologies. But as far as the assessment piece, we certainly can control that timeline to make this as quick and painless as possible for our clients. All right, so there's my mug and some generic information into the program. Should you have questions, I've put my my email address into the chat box. I'll do it once again for anybody that might have come in late, because if you have any questions, we know that sometimes these are of a personal nature, and you'd prefer to reach out in person, which we totally understand. And we'd be pleased to answer any questions you do have, because the only silly question is the one that hasn't been asked, and we want to make sure that we cover all that. All right. How'd we do there, Emily?
Perfect. That was great. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and present for us today at the Roadshow. And we really hope that we're able to get the word out about your amazing program to everyone listening, whether they be from the Okanagan or just from around the Lower Mainland, wherever in BC. We hope, we hope that the word has gotten out, and that that we're getting as many people looped in as we can. And I think I'm just checking up on the Facebook live stream. It looks like we're okay on there. We had a few people, I think there was around four people that came in through the YouTube live stream, but I can confirm those numbers later too. But it looks like we're good on questions from that, unless there are any more from Alexandra.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you very much, Emily. We appreciate, and we've had a long-standing history working with Connectra and Tetra Society. We appreciate the amazing work that you folks are doing in the community. You're making the difference in people's lives every day. So thank you. Thank you for everything that you do.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Perfect. I think looks like we are good for questions.
Okay.
And let me just pause or stop the recording.
And I can't wait till the